When was the last time you learned how to read? For most people, the last time they learned how to read was the first time they learned how to read. And that's a bit of a problem because when you're first learning the basics, you're reading basic material. But then you get into high school, college, and beyond, and you start reading more advanced material that's much more difficult. Most people don't learn techniques to deal with advanced material or techniques to speed up. You can't really speed up your reading speed when you're young because you're just learning the basics. But where you are today, with the fluency that you have, you can certainly increase your speed. But it comes down to this. There are some old habits that have to change. There are 3 old reading habits that we are particularly interested in changing if we're going to start reading faster and more efficiently. The first old reading habit is called fixation. Fixation is something your eyes do. They will fixate on a word-by-word basis. And the problem with this is you can read more than 1 word at a time. So instead of going 1 word at a time, I'm sure you can read 2 or 3 or even 4 at a time. You already read groups of words sometimes without realizing it. It happens very often when we're driving. If you saw an exit sign on the highway and there were multiple words on that sign, for example, let's say it said New York City. 3 words, New York City, you wouldn't go one by one. If you were driving, you would just glance at the sign, and in that one fixation, you would see all 3 words, and then you would fixate your eyes back on the road. So we can read groups of words. Most people do it when they're driving, but they don't necessarily adapt when they're reading on the printed page or on the screen. So we've got to change this habit and start reading groups of words if we're going to be faster and more efficient. The second old reading habit is something called regression, and this is simply going back to reread material. We've all had that situation where we read something and then we're like, I have no clue what I just read, and I have to reread that material again for better comprehension. The problem here is usually with focus. Your mind wanders off, or maybe you're reading very dry material, or maybe you're just having issues with attention at the time. You've got other things on your mind. So we need to find ways to improve our focus, and we'll talk about that in this course. And if we improve our focus, that's going to help our speed, that will help our comprehension, and it'll help us cut down the amount of time we spend rereading material. The third old reading habit is something called subvocalization. This is that voice you hear in your head while you're reading. Now remember when you were little, your teacher had you read out loud. Eventually, at some point, your teacher says, don't read out loud anymore, say the word silently in your head. Have you noticed that you hear voices in your head? And it doesn't mean you're crazy, it's your voice. It's a very common habit, this habit of subvocalization. But all people do it. The problem is that it limits your reading speed. Think about it this way. If you're saying every single word in your head, doesn't that mean you're going to read as fast as you talk? And that's a bit of a problem because there's a limit to how fast you can talk. Actually, what is the average talking speed? You've already seen the numbers. The average talking speed is 150 to 250. Now, earlier we said that is the average reading speed. Well, just so happens that's also the average talking speed. Why are they the same? It's because of subvocalization. If you're saying all the words in your head, you're only going to read about as fast as you talk. Now, what about your thinking speed? I'm 100% sure that you can think much faster than you can talk. So this is why we have to change this habit of subvocalization. We don't want to get into that habit of saying each and every single word. We want to be able to read closer to what our thinking speed is, and that's a lot faster than we can talk. So we need to change all 3 of these habits: fixation, regression, and subvocalization.